What drives you? What inspires you? Let's ignite your why. Welcome back to Ignite Your Why podcast. I'm your host, Austin T. Gullett, and we're here to have genuine conversations with authentic people to help amplify their voice and figure out what ignites the why. Today, we have the real OG back. This guest was our very first episode on Ignite Your Why, and his episode aired back in January of 2021. It is titled 1.1, Turn Your Wounds into Wisdom. So let's give a huge welcome back to Mr. Aaron Luken. Aaron, how are you doing today?
I am great, man. Thanks for having me back.
Man, I was like, when I was thinking about this series, I was like, I have to have Aaron Luken back on because I remember this whole journey of starting this podcast, and you were the first person I wouldn't say the first person ever, but you were the first episode that aired, and you were one of the first people I ever recorded with, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Well, I'd never been a podcast guest before either, so that makes two of us.
Hey, and I will own up to it right now. I feel like I've told you this off air, but no one else knows this. But during Aaron's episode, Aaron talked so much. But Aaron talked so much that I was still learning how to be a podcaster, and I was always afraid to kind of intervene when people talked. So I actually went back after our recording was done, and I threw in questions to where it seemed like I was asking them in person. But
yeah, I had to get a laugh when you told me that. It wasn't one of those things where it was all on you. I just have a tendency to ramble as it is, and so that played into it a lot too. But it was I remember laughing so
Trust
hard
me.
when you told me that. But
I know.
the intermissions were well placed. I will say that.
Because so as you said, you're a rambler, so I realized you would change topics, right? And I was like, oh, I could fit something in right here because he switches topics.
Well, that's also ADD right there. It's like, okay, we're talking about this, and then, ooh, squirrel. Oh, hey, where'd that go? It's one of those things.
I don't blame you right there. So back in 2021, just thinking about that is just so far ago. It's 2.5 years.
Yeah.
A lot changes in that time, especially with just personal life, professional life. I know personally what's been going on with you. So tell the people what has been going on over the last 2.5 years, man.
Where to begin? There is so much because we talked. I feel like I went back and listened to our original episode that we did. And goodness, it was really strange. But going back and listening, pretty much everything is different now. I would say probably my core whys are pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. The reasons behind them have maybe developed a little bit more. But going back, I think first things first, we talked about my relationship with my grandparents. And at the time, we still had my grandfather. Unfortunately, he actually passed just over a year ago, back in April of 2022. So that was a significant change, and I'm sure we'll go more into that. Also, at the time, I was still working with the Florence Y'all. I was serving as their director of amateur baseball and ticket sales at the time. I've since returned back to our alma mater. I'm with NKU Athletics now, serving as director of athletics ticketing. Norse up. Spoiler alert, I was wearing an NKU shirt before, and it was too dark on the wall behind me. So I was trying to represent Norse Nation, and, I guess I'm just doing it by talking now.
I mean, he looked like a floating head, y'all. When I tell you, his black shirt blended in with that blue wall behind him, it was like a floating head. I should have let you do it. I could have just made fun of you.
I've got a big enough head as it is. We don't need to amplify that anymore.
Hey, you said it. I didn't have to say it.
I have to own up to it. I have to. It's just part of it. And then the third thing that has changed, we talked very briefly at the end of my podcast about a new venture in my life at the time, and that was meeting my then girlfriend, Melissa, right in the middle of the pandemic, which was about as odd as anything as I've ever experienced, but it turned out to be one of the best things. And since then, we are engaged.
Yeah, he liked it, so we put a ring on it.
Of course you did that. And just about 5 weeks from when this episode airs, July 15th, we will be tying a knot. Buddy, why don't you tell him who the best man in that wedding is going to be?
Oh, yours truly. I'm kidding. It is me, but I'm super honored and I'm so happy for you, Melissa. And I'm excited to see this journey continue to flourish and grow and prosper the way it has. Because just knowing you from college to where you are now, like I've seen so much growth in you. And I've never really told you all that, but I'm going to save more of that for your speech. So, but let's take a step back here. We'll kind of talk about a big career change for you, right?
Sure.
Because when we talked last time, y'all, this guy loves baseball so much, and working in sports has always been his dream, especially baseball, right? Which is his favorite sport. And I'm never gonna let you forget at your shower how you said your favorite professional sports team was the Bengals. Anyways, but
it's 1A and 1B.
I had to throw it in. But the thing is like you leaving that industry and leaving baseball, how hard of a decision was that for you? But how has that helped you grow personally, but also professionally over that time as well?
Well, first things first, I have to give all the credit in the world to the Florence Y'alls and thank them for the opportunity that they gave me. Fresh out of college, didn't have a ton of experience and allowed me the room to grow into helping me land the position that I did. It was not necessarily something I had looked to do, but when circumstances changed, that's really what did it for me. So, as you can imagine, working in minor league baseball, it's a small staff. It's a short season. You're packing 96 games into 3 months, and
Holy shit.
we had 3.5 months really. But then you've got playoffs, and realistically, I started even earlier and lasted even longer because you started amateur tournaments probably early March, and those would run sometimes into November, depending on when it was. And when we went through everything with my grandfather, he was in the nursing home, and thank goodness at the time when we recorded last time, didn't really have the opportunity to go see him as often as we would have liked because of COVID restrictions and everything. And thankfully, he never came down with COVID. We were very lucky in that respect because his facility was hit as one of the hardest. But even still, I mean, the place had opened back up again. There weren't really restrictions anymore, but the complications of being able to go see him, because there was pretty much something going on every day. And when there wasn't, I was sleeping because I was so exhausted.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I was able to take the liberties I needed when it became clear that this was going to be the end, to spend as much time with him as I could. But that was probably the biggest thing that changed for me. It kind of was a perspective shift. Like, you know what? You can love what you do, but at the end of the day, your family, your relationships, those are the most important things.
That work-life balance, it's so important. And I don't think people realize, like, when you're in the sports industry, like, people think it's like sunshine and rainbows, I guess you can say, because you get the perks of going to all the games and you get the cool swag and you get the gear. But you guys do not realize there's so much shit that goes on, like, behind the scenes that you have to, like, prepare for. And I think back to just working at FC Cincinnati for 3 years, and there's days where you're working at 9 a.m., but then it's a weekday and there's a Wednesday night game. So you're working from 9 a.m. to 10, 11:30 at night. And it's just frustrating. Not, I wouldn't say frustrating, but it does, like, take a toll on you, especially when your job requires you to do more outside of game days. So it's like with you, like, doing amateur sports, like, you also had to be at those tournaments. You had to oversee and sightsee, like, manage those
put
employees.
The rules together, manage the employees, deal with coaches calling you from different facilities that were playing in the same tournament because they didn't like an umpire strike zone, wondering how they even got your cell phone number in the process. So it was one of those things. Yeah, it was a huge perspective shift. And not to say that currently it's not a 9 to 5, but it's certainly much more manageable. And so that was probably the biggest thing. But also with, I knew at that time that was also one of the huge events. I knew already that I wanted to marry Melissa, but having her around when all of that took place, it was like, if there was any doubts, which there weren't, it was, okay, I'm going to marry this girl. I just need to figure out how I'm going to ask, because I want it to be as perfect as I believe she is. And she's a teacher, y'all. So think about it. You've got somebody who's off in the summers and somebody who is never home in the summers. It's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's certainly not something great to start a new marriage out with. I want to be around and be with her. I want to spend time with her, and I want to start building our life together. So that was a huge thing. So being able to land the NKU job, which just kind of came open, and ironically, I took over for a mentor of mine who was getting out of the sports industry and that I had interned under. So being able to come in there and take that over and now have the same schedule as Melissa and just still be able to enjoy the life of working in sports, but also being able to, hey, we're going to be busy during the same times. There's
Right.
not as many basketball games. They're spread out further over the course of the fall and winter. It was just better all the way around. And in the back of my head, I always wanted to come back to NKU in some capacity, and that also fulfilled that dream. So it really couldn't have been a better opportunity at a better time.
I think it all comes full circle when you think about it, because when I think back to college and I think of just seeing you and your involvement with NLS and just like your love for the university, it all kind of makes sense for you to be back at NKU. And now that like I never really knew the full reason behind like why you wanted to leave the Florence Y'alls, right? Because every time we talked, it was always just like the complaining. But when you explain it the way you just did, like it makes more sense, and it's just evident the love you have for Melissa, and it just God has a path, and everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, and it's an exciting chapter for you as we move forward.
It is, and you say the love that I have for her. Well, God love her; she's easy to love. So
stop being cute. Quit it.
She'd be telling me the same thing. I'd be getting the eye roll emoji if she were hearing that. I probably will when she listens to this.
And she'd be like, Aaron.
And that's exactly how she'd say it too.
No, but I kind of want to touch on a subject. I know that's very deep for you. I know your relationship with your grandpa was something that you held very dear to your heart. And just I saw the process of your grief with your grandmother, and then it's been a little bit different with your grandpa, I feel like. How has that impacted you emotionally, but also just in your everyday life? Because I know the impact he had from your childhood on was just super significant for you.
That is a deep one, and I'm going to apologize in advance if I do get a bit emotional here as we talk through it.
We don't apologize for our feelings.
Amen, brother.
And never apologize for speaking how you feel. Never.
Okay. Well, I take it back then. So it was very strange. Going back and looking back on it, I mean, we're about a month and a half ago, it was 1 year since he passed. So there's been a lot of introspective because of that, and in the lead up to the wedding for both of my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first go round, losing my grandmother, there has been so much change for the better and so much growth in my well-being and in my perspective that I don't want to say it made it easier, because damn it didn't. It was still as hard as anything I've ever gone through, but in the back of your mind that in all the significant moments, they're still there. And that you were taught well. One of the things that I've really never told anybody, and I didn't know about this until I was older, having the relationship I did with my grandfather and him viewing me as another son of his, he had shared privately with other members of my family that I don't want to go until Aaron is ready. I'm sure he said it a different way, but hearing that as we were going through that process, it hit hard. But then I realized, hey, you know what? Thanks to him and thanks to all the other positive influences in my life, my mother, all my mentors, Melissa to a great extent, and all of my friends who've had a profound impact on my life and my being. You'll never be ready to say goodbye, but it tells me, and it gave me the confidence that, you know what, he's still going to be around, just in a different way. And I'm going to be able to persevere forward because of the lessons that he taught me and the type of man that he brought me up to be. And I hope and I pray that every day I live up to that expectation and that stature that I held him to and will continue to for the rest of my life, and hope to pass that on to my kids and my grandkids as we go forward. But him going when he did, that was, in a weird way, it was an indication, you know what, you can handle this.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be hard because the grief in that moment is the price that you pay for loving somebody so dearly and being so appreciative of what they do for you. And especially now leading up to the wedding, I mean, for both of my grandparents, I wish to hell that they could be there.
And they will.
They
just
will.
In a different capacity. They'll be there, though.
Yeah, they'll be in a different capacity. And on that day, I'm going to have in my breast pocket of the suit over my heart a photo of their wedding day, because that is the inspiration that I draw from. They were married for 67 years through all kinds of ups and downs that you couldn't imagine, losing multiple children in some of the worst ways that you could imagine, and just the hardship of him having to watch as my grandmother withered away with the Alzheimer's disease and everything else in between, but also all the phenomenal moments that they celebrated. That is my inspiration for my love, and the dedication that they showed one another over the course of their life is how I want the relationship to be with Melissa. So that they are still going to be a significant part of our story going forward, even if they're not here physically.
And that's just a beautiful thing, you know, when you think back and just you have those memories. Because I think of my parents, right? My parents have been together for 31 years.
Mm-hmm.
Married. They've been married for 31 years, together longer than that. But their love is just so evident, and it's just something that you aspire for. I feel like when I was younger, I always was like, I want to marry my high school sweetheart, like my mom and dad, right? And then it's just like, oh shit, like that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, like it's weird because it's like my grandparents have been together for a long time. I can't even tell you how many years they've been together. Maybe 70, maybe longer. I don't. Mm-hmm. It's somewhere in that area. Like they've been like when they have like the weddings and like, you know how they do like the couple dances and like they do like the marriage years. My grandparents are usually the last ones standing. But I think it's just
what you aspire for.
Right. And I think it's just like a beautiful thing. And I think you live every day honoring both your grandparents and you find ways to incorporate them in your life. Right. Just like when you proposed to Melissa, I know it's your story, but like you picked the date specifically because it was your grandfather's birthday. Right.
Yep.
And I think it's just crazy to me that it was raining. And then when the time came, it stopped. I don't know if you'd recognize that.
Oh, I did.
Like, did you realize that? Like, that's wild to me.
Because in the back of my mind, along with everything else going on, I guess we'll tell the story of the proposal now. So backtracking just a few steps, again, I knew at this point that I was going to propose to Melissa. She was knocking my door down, asking me, trying to trick me every which way possible, trying to tell me or trying to get me to tell her how I was going to do it. Well, first things first, I had no idea. I kept trying to think of the perfect way, because it needed to live up to my feelings for her and what I thought she deserved, especially as I kept her waiting and waiting and waiting in her mind. And it was one of those things where you're just sitting there and you're like, wait a minute. We were at her best friend's wedding. She was in the bridal party of her best friend from high school over the 4th of July last year. And so, of course, I'm at the rehearsal dinner. I know nobody there except for my girlfriend at the time and the couple, because we had done a lot of double dates and things with them. And so I'm just sitting there like a bump on a log. And as we're watching, I'm like, yep, this is going to happen. And then the next night at the wedding on that Saturday, I'm sitting there and it's just like, yep, this is going to be a thing. I'll figure it out after the fact. And what you kind of realize in the moment is it's not, you can search for the perfect moment all you want. It's kind of like looking for something and expecting to find it. More often than not, you're going to come across it when you're least expecting it. So Libby and Blake are up there on the altar saying their I do's, and I'm like, I can't take it anymore. The love was exploding from my heart, and I'm like, okay, I need to do this. And no, I didn't propose at the wedding, people. That's not what this is leading up to.
I was like, you're giving them this like spiel, and it's like you're making it seem like this happened at the wedding.
No, absolutely not. That was where the realization came from. Don't worry, I'm not that guy. I'm not going to propose at somebody else's wedding, and I hope nobody else does at mine.
Period. We'll be fighting.
Yes. I will put him on it. So what we did, though, is, of course, Melissa rode with the bridal party to the reception, and I rode with her parents because they were at the wedding, too. I mean, they grew up with her best friend. So they were there, and I'm sitting there, and I don't go into any big, elaborate speech. I just tell them how much I love their daughter, and I ask for her hand because I'm thinking to myself, if I don't just come right out and ask, I'm going to sound like an idiot. So I just came right out and asked. And before I could get the words out, they said yes. And it became clear to me that, okay, this is going to be a thing now. Now I got a plan. So I waited until Libby and Blake got back from their honeymoon because Melissa had always told me that Libby wanted to be involved in the process. I didn't have her number yet, but I knew if I asked her for it, she's going to know what it's for. So I had to come up with a different way. So I DM'd her on Instagram. Had her call me. We started a group text. And sure enough, we started going through every aspect of our love story. All the best moments, our first date at Willie's Sports Cafe, to me shooting an 18 on the third hole of putt-putt on our second date and her miraculously not running because she didn't realize because she then realized what an uncoordinated doof she was about to marry. And then from there, we just talked through it and everything just started to click. I realized,
okay,
hey,
wait
a minute.
Wait a second. Aaron is making it seem like this shit just happened so smooth for him. Because you're making it seem like this was like a very easy process for you. And when I tell you this man overthinks every situation. So he would be like you said, you wanted it to be perfect. But like you mentioned, I feel like that's growth for you because you realize that you can't make a perfect moment. It just happens, right? And he would be like, I want to do this. I want to do that. You give him a suggestion and it's just like all of these things. But it all worked out in the end and it was perfect. I had to hide y'all at this proposal because I had the ring.
Yes, I had given him the ring the night before at an FC Cincinnati game we went to together. It was up at the Overlook at DeVue Park in Covington. And first things first, we were at a double date with Libby and Blake that they orchestrated. Of course, I was the one that orchestrated it with her, but they made it seem like they were the one scheduling it, so she wouldn't be any the wiser. Apparently, all the while, she was looking at my pants pocket to make sure there wasn't a ring box bulge. And there wasn't one because he had it. And
because we're smart thinkers.
Yes, big brain. And we get there, and I think you text because at this point we had a group chat with all of our families, and we'll get into this in a second. And there's somebody else proposing in that same area, so it's like, we got to backtrack, we got to pivot.
Yeah, so that was like so stressful because I was like, what the fuck is going on right now?
And imagine us sitting at dinner, Libby and I she looks at her watch, I look at my phone from my pocket. We both kind of look at each other, and then I'm staring off into the distance, looking like I'm pondering the meaning of life or something. And Melissa's like, what are you looking at? I was like, the view. I'm looking at the view over there. And and then we get, she's driving up to the Overlook after dinner. We get there, and then, we get lost.
Yeah, I was like, where the frick are you guys? Like, I was like starting to panic. I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is going on? And then I eventually was just like, all right, I'm just going to let this play out. And I was like hiding behind a tree and like,
you were on the wall.
Well, I was originally behind a tree, and then I was like, "Oh shit, I have to give the ring to the photographer." So
Yeah.
then I moved because I wanted to record it. So like I had like my hood up so people couldn't see me,
Yeah.
and then
And
I had
then,
my phone like this. Like I'm just like,
yeah, so you were just chilling over there in the distance. There was these sunflower decorations and everything else. She wasn't any the wiser. We were just acting like we were taking a walk through the park, and we wanted to look at the overlook because, believe it or not, she's lived in this area all her life. She's never seen it. So
what?
we're up there. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. You'll have to have that conversation with her.
Interesting.
So we were up there, and yeah, you handed the ring off to Michael, who was our photographer for the Little Y'allers League when I still worked at the Y'alls, and you handed it off to him, and he's up there acting like he's taking pictures, and it sounds like, and he asks us, he comes up and asks us, like, "Hey, I'm pretty much done shooting for the day. It's kind of drizzling at this point. I want to get it done. Last thing I need is just some pictures with people in it." So she kind of looks to me, and I'm like, okay, knowing all well like what this is, and she's looking at like, Aaron, what the hell are you doing? But she goes with it. We get our pictures, and he says he's done. And at that point, I say, well, that's good because I'm not, and I'm down on one knee with my great grandmother's wedding ring, which was the engagement ring that I used, and I asked her, and you got it all on film, which is a good thing because I don't remember anything at all that
It's
I
a
said
good
other than,
video
"Will you
too.
marry
Like
me?"
I was really proud of that video. I was like, this is
It
good.
was that thing.
It's like this is good quality, like cinematic mode.
It was excellent, and she was none the wiser. She had no idea.
Because she didn't
And
even see me until after the fact. And like when I
Yeah,
walked up to you guys, and she was like, "What the heck?"
well, once it was done, the photographer was like, "Can I get your pictures now?" And she laughs, and then also another photographer was my niece, who was hiding in the bushes behind us to get a
Oh
different
yeah, I
angle. So they
remember
point
that.
her out, and then you're like, "Woo!" from your camera, and she looks over, and I think it was one of my favorite pictures, and her face was just like, "That's my favorite picture."
What was
from
her face
that.
like?
It was that. And then, like you mentioned before, I mean, it couldn't have been a more perfect day. I mean, the rain stopped. So it turned out to be a nice view. The pictures were excellent. She said yes, which I should have led with because that's the most important thing.
Well, I mean, I feel like they figured because you mentioned that you're getting married in 5 weeks.
Sure.
So it kind of all makes sense.
Yeah. And then, of course, it being my grandfather's birthday, the first birthday since he passed, August 14th, 2022, he would have been 91. And I knew that she wanted me to propose before she went back to school. So I only had a couple weeks left, and I couldn't think of a better way because, of course, I've already spoken at length about what he meant to me in our relationship and how much I would have wanted him there. And then in the very short time that she knew him, she grew to love him as well. So to have him be a part of that day in that way and take a day that for everybody in our family was going to be not sad, but very bittersweet, and give it that now dual meaning. And then if you look back on some of the pictures, especially the one where I'm down on one knee, and I think it's near the point where she says yes. If anybody out there believes in the paranormal, there was actually an orb in that photo, and I'm convinced it was him.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
You learn
like
something
little
every day.
anomalies like that. It was like a little white speck that looks like a shadow almost, and you can see that in the picture. And I have no doubt that that's not him.
100%. 100%. I think it's just amazing just to see your journey unfold over the last 2.5 years, like just since the last time we recorded, and just how much you've grown as an individual. I feel like there's been so much growth with you professionally and personally. And I'm just proud of you, honestly, because you're starting to put yourself first and you're starting to do stuff for yourself and not necessarily like live for other people. And I think that's the most important thing. So the last time we talked, you mentioned that when I asked like what your why was, you had 2 answers to it, right? At the beginning of this episode, you mentioned that your why is somewhat the same, but there has been some change in that. So I'm going to ask the question again. What is it that ignites your why?
For me, I think now it's, the love of sport is still there. But first things first, I wouldn't say that it's the primary thing. I think that it's just continuing to be the best man possible for my family, for my friends, everybody that's a part. So that I'm so lucky to have in my life, so that I can be there for them and be the support that I needed. Still kind of being that torch, but not, instead of just necessarily igniting them, helping to keep them going as we go through the trials and tribulations of life. I mean, at the time it was COVID, and all the other things, just trying to figure life out.
Mm-hmm.
But now now everybody's a little bit older. We seemingly have some things figured out. There's a lot we still don't have figured out, but there's a lot that, yeah,
so much shit that I'm just like, what the fuck?
Yep, me too, on a daily basis. But I think for all of us, there's those things that we've been through and those experiences that shape us and our mindset to where we might not have all the answers. But at the same time, I may have gone through something, or you may have gone through something that could help me. Or I've gone through something that, okay, this is how I handled this. Here's what I think you can do, knowing what I know about you. So that's kind of that's kind of where it shifted. And again, notice, as much as I still love sport, and that's going to continue to guide my career as we go, especially now being back at NKU, a place that I love so much, and wanting to take that place in my position from being just kind of an afterthought, except for our core fan base, and getting it full on a nightly basis. So that's huge for me. But it's not the primary, if that makes sense. Of course, it's the primary when I'm in the office from 9 to 5.
100% makes sense to me, because I totally get it. Because I feel like, especially when you love sports so much and like you work in sports, it's like you feel like that's. Let me say this, because I feel like this is how it happened for me. So like maybe you can relate. So just being an athlete growing up, playing sports and being a part of a team and falling in love with the game made me want to be around the sport even more. But as I got older, I realized that my love for sports wasn't necessarily playing the game anymore. It was more so just being around it, helping evolve it, helping kids grow, helping grow a program. It kind of like changed that vision, right? Where it was just like, I thought I couldn't live without sports, like by playing them. But then once you got to college, like I still played. But now that I'm 27 and I don't play regularly, or I hardly play at all, it's kind of like, okay, like my passion for sports is still there. Like I still love the game, but it's in a different capacity.
Right. It's in a different capacity. It's gone from wanting to play it, and that being the thrill of competition still drives you, because otherwise you're not going to succeed in that industry.
As a coach, as a coach, I can't even tell you. Like I am one of the most competitive people like you will probably ever meet, and I hate to.
Yes, you are.
I hate to lose, right? And I think one of the hardest things as a coach for me is when I want it more than the kids, and it's hard, man. Like I hated to lose. I never wanted to lose. I wanted to be the best. So I gave 110% every single time. And there's been games that we've had, and these kids, it's like, we just lost like by 5, and you guys are like laughing and you guys just don't care. Like that should anger you. Like that should fury you. That should put fuel to the fire. Like that. It just mind blows. Like my mind gets blown every single time when I see kids who have so much talent, but they don't want to put in the work to get to the top. And it's, I don't know if it's like a generation thing, but competitiveness. And I think I'm the same way with my teams. It's like, I don't care who you are. People are going to get mad at me, but if you like UC, I hate them. Right? It's that competitiveness. There's that rivalry. Like I'm a Xavier boy for life. X for life. Let's go X, right? I will always cheer for Xavier, and like that's just my thing. Like, and I think that's just part of growing up, is like I can't play it, but you find that passion within like your favorite teams, and it's just it's It's different.
And
I don't know.
yeah, and with the Y'alls, I mean, you kind of touched on it, being able to set up those programs and have those kids be a part of them. That was a huge thing. But again, as the paradigm shifted and the ability to be able to step away and enjoy other things and do other things kind of took over, that it became more of, okay, now I'm in this new role. We've got some work that we need to do. We've got a lot of growth that we can do, because we were in the athletic department at NKU, especially with men's basketball, was in a great spot before COVID hit. And then we took a dip that we're still recovering from. So that competitiveness went from, I mean, of course, it's still seeing it on the floor, but I don't think people realize what a good product NKU's putting out on a night in, night out basis. They've just landed a huge transfer class, and coming off, of course, the fourth Horizon League championship in 7 years. And I hate to say it, but we're still an afterthought. I mean,
I know,
we're
but
still
it's
sitting
crazy.
There. It's insane. And what people don't understand, our fan base thinks that, oh, this is great, and you see them voicing their concerns after we lose a game by 3, but they don't understand. I don't want to say that they don't understand it, but what is happening in Highland Heights is not supposed to happen.
Right.
It doesn't happen.
But what
Most
makes it
times,
hard,
coaches are going to get poached. Which
right.
Thankfully, when John Brannon left, we were able to bring in Darren Horn. You do that, and you maintain that level of consistency. You don't see that at the 1 AAA level. And so for me, the competitiveness comes now. Okay, we've got a great product. We are affordably priced. We're a family-friendly thing. We've done a lot of things well. But how do we get the basketball fans in this basketball crazy area to come see what a great thing they're missing out on? And seeing those empty seats, it drives me insane.
I just think it's hard because like you're competing with Kentucky basketball.
We're competing with Kentucky basketball.
Or Louisville basketball. And like that's the thing, is like a lot of people grow up in Kentucky and they're Kentucky fans. I'm not gonna lie to you, like I root for Kentucky. I was born and raised a Kentucky fan. I'll root for them, I'll cheer for them, I want them to do well. I cheered against them when they played NKU, and I think that's the only time like I would really cheer against UK is like if they're playing NKU or if they're playing Xavier. Like those are the only 2 teams that like I would probably pull for, and that probably is going to hurt my dad's heart, but I gave a lot of money to those schools, so I'm going to root for them. And I think that's the thing, is just being in Kentucky. Kentucky's known to be a basketball sport. I think our high school basketball tournament is so unique and one of the best out there, but it's hard to compete with a blue blood like Kentucky that has the rich history that everyone kind of grows up knowing. And I'm not going to go too in depth with it, but I think that's the biggest challenge, is how do you get those younger fans? And I think you're starting to see it with alumni. Is like have a few alumni on my Facebook page who are huge NKU fans, and you see their kids and they're NKU fans. So I think it starts there, is like with your alumni. But I feel a lot of our generation isn't having kids. I'm like, or like we'll have kids like later on in life. It's just, it's different. I don't know how else to explain it.
I'll tell you though, in its purest form, I think you're right. We are competing because we are the same type of thing. We're college basketball in a blue blood state where we've got UK, U of L just down the road. We've got Xavier and UC right across the river from us.
Yep.
Look, I understand. If you went to those schools, that's fine. You're going to have allegiance to them. So in our purest form, we are competing with them because we're the same product. But what we're really trying to do is complement, because at the same time, unless you've got season tickets to one of those programs, you're not going to go to their games every night. UK sold out every game. Their tickets are much, 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 much more expensive. So we're not trying to, if you want to be a fan of those programs, great. But if you truly love the game of basketball, then come see what you're missing out on in Highland Heights at Truist Arena. You will not be disappointed. I mean, heck, we took Houston down to the wire. We had them scared. I was there. They were shook. We were about to be another 16 beating a 1, even though we shouldn't have been a 16.
Right.
So
I felt like we were like the toughest 16 seed, which, whatever.
Yeah. So
at this point, there's nothing you can do.
that's my NKU soapbox. So
That's
anybody
his
out there,
spiel, y'all. Go check him out.
come give us a try. Ticket prices will be dropping soon. We've got them. We've got a lot of mini plans. Mini plans are great. You should buy one.
We've already talked about the sports aspect of your why. The last time we talked, you talked about this imagery of a torch, right? And how you were igniting the flame. You kind of touched on it a little bit earlier on, but could you give us a little bit more detail on how that has kind of transpired over the last 2.5 years?
Right. So still igniting the torches of those around me. Again, as cliche as it sounds, I'll go back to it again. I think I called it cliche last time too, but it is.
It's kind of weird how you have this imagery.
Can we take that part out? I don't want to use the word cliche again.
It's fine. We're authentic. We're having real conversations. And I think it's just crazy because you have this imagery of a torch being ignited and flamed, and it just kind of ties into my podcast, which I think is super dope.
Right. Because, at the time we talked about my experience being able to experience what I did and how that helped to kind of shape my perspective and my path forward from one of the darkest times in my life. Mm-hmm. Oh, got an email. And I thought I silenced everything. Sorry, y'all.
It is all good. No worries.
So we were, we talked at length about that. And just to expand on it a little bit further, that still stands. And now I've got a really unique opportunity in coming across and working with a lot of college students who were in the same position we were just a few years ago. Hard to believe we graduated 5 years ago now, but to be able to give back, yep, bringing up sore wounds there, but being able to
showing our
back,
age. I don't like that.
Yeah,
don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm old.
I'm older than you.
That's true. You're really old. I'm kidding.
Oh gosh. So being able to give back to that community and see that go forward, and help them kind of pursue their dreams. It's weird to be the one writing reference letters for people now, for like my former interns, and to be the one hiring the interns and making the decisions.
You're an adult.
You're an adult.
that's the thing about it is like you're just an adult. Like we're old. Like it's kind of weird because you never envision this part of life where we're like, okay, like we have responsibilities now. Like
yes, it's like I have a mortgage. It's like
you
wake
mortgage.
Up one. Yes, I do. You wake up.
I can't say rent is any better, but
you wake up one day and those things just kind of happen. So. Not saying we get it all right, because I certainly don't.
Hell no. We all make mistakes.
I'm still learning a lot. I'm here to tell any of our younger listeners that as put together as somebody sounds, they're really not. You're figuring out as everybody goes along, just like everybody else. If you know what you're doing, it's just because you've been doing it a little bit longer and you know how to do it a little bit better. Because there's still going to be things thrown at you.
Facts.
But it kind of ties into the next point too. You learn how to do things, you learn how to handle situations. And as we go through life, we all experience different things, hardships, difficulties, whatever they may be. And it's difficult to keep that torch lit as those things keep happening, because sometimes it's just like you're pelted over and over again. But understanding that your circle, and it's so important who you surround yourself with, the people that truly care about you want to see the best for you, and likewise you want to see the best for them, and you want to help them any way you can. So doing those things and being able to lean on those folks during those times and celebrate them when times are great, and helping keep each other's torches lit that way, that has been a really fun discovery, and it just kind of happens as you go through life. So that has been very fun.
The whole time you're talking, I'm just thinking like of Finding Nemo, where Dory's just like, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, because that's the fact. It's facts. It's like when life gets hard, like you're gonna get knocked down, and I feel like I've said this in other episodes before. It's not about how you get knocked down; it's how you continue to get back up and continue to fight. Because we all go through those hardships, like you said, and sometimes they come one punch after the other, and it's just like you feel your world crashing, and you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's there. Trust me, The light is at the end of the tunnel. You just got to keep pushing forward. You got to keep fighting, and just know that whatever you're going through, you are strong and you're going to get through it.
Right.
May not be tomorrow, may not be a year from now, but eventually, like, you're going to get through it. You just got to be patient.
One of my favorite things my grandpa would point to, and it's a little bit blunt, but that's kind of the way that he was. When he talked, it was either he didn't talk much. So when he did, you had to listen, because you were either going to learn something very important about yourself or the situation, you were going to laugh your ass off, and more than likely it was going to be a combination of the two. And he would say something to the effect of, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and eventually it's not going to be an oncoming train.
That's fun. That's old humor.
Yeah. Well, he was 91. He was going to be 91, of course.
Okay, I'm just saying. I kind of want to head into my next segment here. It's my favorite segment, in the last segment of this podcast, right? You know me. Anyone who knows this podcast knows that I am a huge mental health advocate. So over the last 2 years, you've experienced a lot of ups and downs. But how have you been taking care of yourself mentally?
Taking care of myself mentally, and I will be the first to tell you, I am not the best at taking my own advice and what I'm about to tell you. And I am proud that I'm now able to admit that. At times, it takes separating yourself from the situation. You already touched on it. I am a huge overthinker. I will probably be sitting up. Yes, huge. I will probably be sitting up trying to fall asleep tonight, thinking to myself, I should have worded that differently. Or I said, after I said this while I was recording the podcast. That's the depth of my overthinking, y'all. So that's separating yourself from, you're telling me, separating yourself from the situation, whatever it is. You might think that you can't get away from it, but actually taking the time, I don't care what it is. You sit down, you read a book, you go try to take a nap, you do, you go meet a friend and hang out for a while. Just something like that to separate yourself from the situation and be around somebody else that you enjoy being around. That is huge, because more often than not, you're going to forget what you're dealing with. So that is one of my big things. And probably the other is just taking time to reflect and realizing, hey, at the end of every situation, and this is a tie back for the OG listeners to my original to the fall retreat theme that Tiller and I co-chaired. Taking the time to reflect. Sorry, I saw your face get there. You old wounds. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
But being able to take the time to reflect. I've done some different things like I've tried gratitude journaling. I've done different things just to be really mindful of, even in the darkest moments and certainly in the best, take stock in what it is you're thankful for, whether it's how you got there, the people that you're there with, the experiences that you've had, even if it is a dark time. That was a huge thing when my grandfather passed, was being able to look back on all the great memories that we had together. I mentioned that I truly believe that grief is the price you pay for loving somebody as much as you do. And so it was very therapeutic to be able to look back on those and be able to smile in the midst of what was one of the darkest times of my life. And then also being able to look forward to what you have coming down the pipe. Obviously, we don't know what's going to come next, but I can certainly know that in 38 days now, at the time of this recording, I will be marrying the love of my life. And this guy right here will be making a speech to embarrass the hell out of me in front of all of our friends and family.
I don't know. I am not going into this intending to make you embarrassed, because it's so easy to do. So
it just happens. I know you're not going into it to intend to do that. It just happens.
I think my goal is to make you cry.
I'll already be crying a lot that day. I am a crier.
No, I think you have a lot of like solid points there, and I think going back and just thinking about what you just said is the most important thing is just being present, right?
Right.
It's okay to take time to separate yourself from situations, but I think sometimes when we do that, we can often forget. And I think that can be a good thing and a bad thing, right? For me, like I'd stay busy to forget the things I'm going through, but it doesn't necessarily mean I'm addressing the situation, right? It's just
Right.
I'm brushing it aside and pushing it under the rug. But in reality, at some point in time, you're going to have to face those things. And I sit here and I'm just like you. I can give really good advice to people, but it's really hard for me to take my own.
Mm-hmm.
You've
given me some great advice that you could do well to take.
I know, and it's just hard because it's like I feel like we're always harder on ourselves. I feel
Amen.
we always hold ourselves to higher expectations, and it's like you don't want to let yourself down. So you try to say like, oh, like I'm this strong ass person and I can do whatever. I can do whatever and I can get through whatever. And you put on this fake facade that like everything's fine. And
yeah,
deep down you're just like, okay, like I'm not okay.
We have this tendency to try and shoulder everything. I think
especially
you and I,
as men. Just
yes.
as men in general, like I feel like society puts this expectation on you that you have to be tough, you can't show emotions, and you have to mask everything to show your strength and that you are a man. And in reality, it takes strength to be vulnerable. And I think that's important for men to understand is you can be vulnerable, you can show your emotions, and it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. So
right.
whatever
and it's not just showing emotion
yeah.
either. It's also this thought process that strength isn't just strength just doesn't expand to physical or mental. It's the strength to be able to carry on and persevere through what you're doing. But when you're continuing to be beaten down by whatever it is that you're dealing with, because so many things affect so many different people in so many different ways,
right?
Those are the things that continue to weigh you down, and you feel like you're shouldering so much, and then you're taking care of everybody else, but then you're neglecting the one person. And then realistically, what are they going to do without you?
I mean, I feel like what you're saying is like we sometimes neglect the person that matters the most, and that's ourselves, right? Regardless of who you're with or anything like that, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're doing everyone else a disservice.
Right.
Dropping nuggets. Okay, I'm kidding. No, man, I really just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know it's super late here now when we're recording, so I'm exhausted. It's been a long day. So thank you just for taking the time out. If anyone wants to continue having a conversation with you about anything that we might have talked about today, what would be the best way for them to get a hold of you?
They can reach out via any of my social medias. I'm not the best at social media. I don't Twitter well, so maybe not there. But really, any other ones, or if you want to throw an email down there, that's fine too. I like to be accessible.
I got you. Again, thank you, Aaron, for taking the time out of your day. And thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to put all of Aaron's information in the description below. If you happen to reach out, please make sure you notate on how you found him. It would be much appreciated. Also, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Ignite Your Why. That's INGYTE, not with an I. So make sure you follow us. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of the above. So make sure you check it out. Again, thank you all for tuning in. And always remember, find your purpose and ignite your why. Peace.